Hello, this is Keith Grossman. I'm here with my friend Gonzalo Palacio, and we're going to talk today a little bit about a story, conflict management story that I've been calling the Plum incident. And I just want to take a minute here to give a little bit of background related to the Plum incident and how Gonzalo and I found ourselves in this situation. So first of all, Gonzalo and I have become pretty good friends over the last year or so. And we've gotten together, we've done some stuff together, and we have gotten together with our families. We've joined up with our families and done things from time to time. And of course, other stuff, talking on the phone, texting, and those sort of things. But recently, Gonzalo and I decided to do a road trip. We live in Fort Myers, and we were headed over to Miami, and we were going to meet up with some other folks over there. So we were driving together in my car, and we had never been together, just the two of us in my car. We hadn't done a road trip like this or anything before, but this is what we were doing. So what happened was we met at my house, and we got into my car, pulled out of the parking lot, and really did not get very far down the street when out of the corner of my eye, all of a sudden I saw Gonzalo pull out a Plum. And I have no idea where the Plum came from, Gonzalo. I didn't see you bring the Plum into the car, and I had no expectation that you were going to start eating. So I was kind of caught by surprise. And when we got into the car, Gonzalo had asked me a question, and I was in the process of answering the question. I was telling him a story as an answer to the question, and suddenly when I saw him pull out this Plum, I was totally just I lost track of my thought. I lost my train of thought. I was looking at this Plum that he was now taking a bite out of, and I don't like people eating in my car. And Gonzalo did not know this, and so what happened was I started debating in my mind, instead of finishing the story, about how am I going to ask Gonzalo to not eat the Plum, or how am I going to tell him that I don't like people eating in my car. And meanwhile, I'm in the middle of this story, and now I've paused for a few seconds, and Gonzalo has no idea what's going on in my head because I've now said nothing, and I'm just kind of looking and determining, okay, how am I going to handle this? So what I wound up saying was I looked at Gonzalo and I said, Gonzalo, I'm really sorry. I apologize. I've lost my train of thought, but I hate when people eat in my car. And I just blurted it out. And so Gonzalo, my first question really is, so when I said this to you, what were you thinking about in your head? You know, I looked at you and I said, I hate when people eat in my car. That was the first thing I really said to you about it. So what was it that was going on in your head now at that moment?
Well, you know, my first reaction was I connected because I feel the same way. You know, I don't like anyone eating in the car, but it usually is family. You know, I usually the kids, no eating in the car, and they'll get in the car. Oh, I'm starving. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to wait till we get home or we find a place. No one's eating in the car. So that was my first thought. I connected. My second thought was, okay, I have a conflict here because I've already bitten into the Plum. By the way, I did have a paper towel.
You did. I saw that, and you know, I was imagining the fruit starting to dribble down your cheek, and you're already prepared with that. So I did appreciate that.
Right. So my second thought was, okay, well, what do I do now? Either I throw it out the window, or I hold on to this Plum for the next 2 hours, which is not good. So I said, well, you know, I am sorry, but I'll be very careful. I have no choice now. I must finish it.
The fruit must be finished. And I didn't even offer to stop to let you throw it out or anything. I hadn't thought about that. But so I mean, after the kind of the initial feeling of connecting, where you knew where I was coming from, I mean, how else did you feel? Were you feeling any guilt about that? Were you feeling defensive? Did you have any sense of anger about it?
Um, no, no, I would say guilt. I felt, I felt bad. I didn't, you know, I didn't want to violate any type of boundary, um, or step over, I guess, disrespect or anything like that, because you never know. People might feel disrespected that, hey, you're not following the rules in my domain. Um, and so, I mean, even something that small can make someone feel uncomfortable. So, yeah, of course, I was thinking like, oh, I don't want to upset Keith. But what do I do? What do I say? How do I handle this? So, you know,
Afterwards, and we got through it obviously without really it escalating into anything. But one of the things that I said to you later was that what I really focused on, what I felt bad about, and I felt bad about it really. I started to feel bad about it really as the words were coming out of my mouth when I made the statement. I really hate when people eat in my car. And when I mentioned that to you later, you had said to me that phrasing really didn't bother you, and you took that in stride. But from my perspective, I felt like, wow, I really could have communicated what I wanted to say in a better way. My choice of words could have been a lot better. Um, but I think that maybe you didn't necessarily feel that way, and maybe that's more of a attribute for you than it would be maybe for some other people.
I think you're right. I think it's probably my personality. I'm more of a, I, I, I guess I try to run away from conflict, and I guess one way of dealing with that is um, not allowing certain things to bother me in a certain way. Um, but I will say one thing I've thought about in these days was, you know, that's usually something I say to my kids. Like, I'm an adult. I'm going to be very careful. I'm not going to make a mess. Uh, and I know that you meant well, and I don't think that were thinking any less of me. Um, but perhaps someone else could have taken it that way. Like, oh, what are you saying? I
That
can't,
I that I was like, like, came across maybe like I was scolding you.
it could, right? I mean, someone could take it that way. They could feel like, well, what's the big deal? It's a plum. I have a paper towel, and I'm a grown up. However, I would have never, I didn't think about that. I just thought like, oh boy, I felt bad, and I didn't want to again make you feel like I was disrespecting any boundary in your car. Because again, I do connect because I know how that feels. I don't, it's funny. I don't like anyone eating in my car. Yet sometimes I'll eat in my car. I'll find myself eating something. So um, perhaps that's why I brought us. And also, by the way, I brought plums, and I also brought a little bag of cashews with me. And I didn't eat those. I put those.
Yeah.
I
And
left those alone.
I saw the cashews, and I figured, that you had those for later in the day, So I saw those. I never saw the plum. I just didn't know where it came from. The first time I saw it was all of a sudden it was in your mouth, and so. But I think you make a great point about the choice of language, and I had a sense that I could have chosen a better way of saying it, but I didn't even really, until just now when you were saying it, I didn't even really think about it in terms of it coming across and being perceived as being scolding. And I was curious whether your perception, I mean, you handled it beautifully. You really did. And,
Oh,
but I did wonder, did I come across as being annoyed, or did you feel I was being accusatory, or did you think I was angry? Um, I was curious what you were thinking was my emotional state at that moment, because the reality was is that I wasn't trying to be any of those things. To
right.
me, I just wanted to resolve the possibility of making a mess in my car, and maybe I was not giving credit to somebody who is an adult, and you're right, did come prepared for the possibility of some fruit juice, making a little bit of a mess, and you were prepared for that. So I mean, what was your perception of my emotional state at that moment when I made that comment?
No, to be honest with you, I guess, I've gotten to know you pretty good, and I know that you would never have scolded me. Um, that's one, and two, I think, your first reaction was to tell me, "Oh, I don't like anyone eating in the car," but then we moved on to a funny story about an incident where someone ate in your car in the past, and so that made that situation it kind of, I guess, and I never felt like it was a tense situation, but if there was any tension, it brought that tension pretty low, because we started laughing about the story, and you know I said to you, oh, I'm sorry, I'll eat it really quick and I'll make sure I don't make a mess, and I laughed, and you laughed. They said, oh, don't worry, and so I think the reaction afterwards, if you thought you felt like you were too harsh at first, you definitely sprung into action right away because you lowered that tension. Uh, but I
Well,
never know.
and I have seen other people do something like this, and I could have taken it even farther and insisted, that you stop eating or throw it out or whatever, like you were saying. And I said to you, well, you already started, so go ahead and finish it. And then we moved into, like you said, the funny story. So I think that I was able to reel it back in pretty quickly, and it did not become the mountain out of the molehill kind of situation.
Right.
But I think your response helped me to kind of recognize that, and that's one of the reasons why I said before that I thought your response was really terrific and perfect for the situation. And I made some points of why I think that. I'm going to run through that right now, because first of all, you could have chosen to take an attacking type of posture with me.
Right.
What are you worried about? I'm an adult, and
Right.
I brought provisions in case I make a mess, and you could have come right back at me, and you didn't do that. You very quickly recognize that maybe you should have asked and not assumed
Correct.
that it was okay, and you apologized for that. You very quickly took responsibility for that and apologized for doing that, and that was definitely helpful. And as you said before, you connected with why I even brought it up as a topic. And so, in the terms for conflict management, we would say that you quickly empathized with the concern that I was expressing, and you responded in a way that made me understand that you were empathizing with why I was raising this concern, and so that was great. And then you also offered the solution. You immediately included in that okay, what would you like me to do? I can put it away. I can stop eating it. And so you immediately moved into a solution oriented type of response as well. So those are the types of things that I think really made your response perfect and helped set the tone for me to reel it back in and say, this is not that big of a deal, and this is not something that we need to be spending any more time on, and certainly we don't need to be angry with each other. Do you feel like you handled it a way that you're very satisfied and can be proud of yourself in the way you handled it?
That, that definitely. I think we both handled it um, like you said, like you mentioned, correctly, quickly, swiftly. Um, it was a smooth uh, interaction, and then I took it as a learning experience, and learning more about you. Um, like I said, I had a bag of cashews that, in case maybe on the ride back got hungry, I can eat my cashews. And I said to myself, well, I'll leave those there, and I won't open them, because I know now how that makes you feel. Um, and
Right. So if you could have been on the verge of fainting, and I would not have let you eat your cashews. But, but no, in my training, I do talk about how we're in conflict every day of our lives. The real
uh,
question is how handling of the conflict is dealt with, and that's where the problem really arises if you don't handle the conflict appropriately or effectively. Because I use as an example in my training that many times we'll do stuff like we're going to go sit in the same chair as somebody else, and we have to negotiate to sit in that chair, or we're sitting at a table with other people and we're both reaching for the salt and pepper at the same time, and we have to negotiate who's going to get to use it first. More times than not, those types of conflicts are resolved very, very quickly and without incident, and you just move on. But there are times where, for some reason or another, that little conflict really escalates and truly becomes a conflict in the way that we would define a conflict, but the potential is always there. And so with the Plum incident, it was a learning experience for both of us. We quickly understood the boundaries and figured out solutions on how to resolve it, and it didn't take much of our time, and we moved on, and we had a wonderful trip. But
yep.
it certainly could have, if we were different people and handled it differently in that moment, it certainly could have been a different direction. I mean, we could have been driving for 2 hours in silence.
That's true. I have a question for you. Do you think in these small situations like that, when there's small conflicts, do you think that a person's upbringing, or manners play a big role in how conflict is managed?
I absolutely believe that it plays a role. I don't think that's the limiting factor. I think there's a
Right,
lot of variables that go into this. But the reality is that growing up, we have behavior modeled for us.
right,
And I believe that through our lifetime and prior to adulthood, through those 18 years of childhood, I believe that we have all types of behaviors modeled for us, and there's some aspect of choosing which type of behavior resonates with us, and we're gonna follow. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be the behavior that you see at home, and maybe more frequently than anything else. You can be in a home where everything escalates very quickly, and there's yelling and there's throwing of stuff and those sort of things. But you could be at a friend's house and see that they handle it differently and just internally feel that that's a better way, that the other family is handling it better. And even though you're seeing the behavior, which is more yelling and screaming and throwing things in your house, you're seeing that more regularly, more frequently, you could still make a decision that that's not how you're going to handle those types of situations. And you see that there's another adult other adults or another family that are handling it more in the way that you think is appropriate. So I think there's some choices that are there, but I do think that there is influence with the types of behaviors that are modeled for you, and that more times than not, you're going to follow the type of behavior that you see most frequently, and typically that's what would be in the house. So I definitely think that it plays a role, but I don't think that it's the only thing.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So, well, I really appreciate that you took the time to have this conversation. I felt like it was a learning experience for both of us, and that it's an experience that we could share with other
Okay.
people. And I appreciate the transparency and your willingness to talk about something that we don't normally talk about and may be uncomfortable. And we're sending this out over the internet so other people will see this. So I really appreciate everything about that and your willingness to play this game with me.
No, thank you. Thank you for thinking and reaching out. This is wonderful. This is really cool. I enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks so much, Gonzalo.
All right.
I'm going to
Take care.
turn this off now. Thanks.
Yeah.